Mountain and Arion are kind of on this one end of the spectrum. If you're going to put knights on a spectrum, which
sure,
maybe we need more like a 4-quadrant plot.
They are on the spectrum. Many of them.
Knights on the spectrum. Podcast title done.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Pod of the Seven Kingdoms, a journey through the Dunk and Egg novellas. I am Baki Balboa.
And I am Belok, and we are not actually reading a particular section of the book today, but we are talking about the book. So we finished up, if you've listened to our previous episodes, we finished up the first novella. We're doing a few episodes in between to talk about sort of bigger topics within the novella and without the novella. I'm sure there'll be some other topics related to broader A Song of Ice and Fire stuff. But we had a really good comment on one of our videos that asked us to talk about knighthood and the different kinds of knights that we've seen in the novel so far. And I thought that was a great topic because I do think George R. R. Martin is saying something significant about knighthood and feudalism. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
I love this because, I've always, ever since I got done with 8th grade book reports, I'm like, where do I talk about my themes? You
can't make jokes while I'm drinking my tea. I'm going to choke to death on the podcast.
But there are a lot of knights in this book. I mean, with it being a tournament, it's almost exclusively knights. With the exception of our main character.
Hey, hold on. Listen. What is a knight? That is something we're going to talk about today.
Exactly. So we encounter a lot of knights, Baelor, Breakspear, maybe the paragon of the story, and Maekar, his brother. We even get people from further afield like Lionel Baratheon and the Humphreys, the
Beesbury, my good
Beesbury and Harding, and so we get confronted with a lot of characters who are knights, but throughout this story we are also confronting like what it means to be a knight and what makes you a knight, and we get sort of confronted immediately with whether or not a knight is someone who's undergone the ritual of becoming a knight or does certain things that resemble knighthood, or like what is it that makes a true knight. And this book obviously differentiates between those who are considered true knights by Westeros and those who are knightly in maybe like the more classic sense. So I guess like the easiest way to start this would just be to talk about what is the expectation in this world of what makes someone a knight.
Yeah, and that's a big question, but we get that throughout this book and also throughout the main series. And it sort of seems to be what you would consider a knight in classic fantasy. So they're going to be chivalrous. They're going to be someone who protects the weak, but someone who also obeys their lord. Someone who's honest and honorable. Someone who knows how to fight and how to do violence, but only a certain kind of violence. Only some violence is acceptable.
Chivalrous sort of violence.
A chivalrous sort of violence only. Only chivalry violence. Yeah. Which we could talk about in terms of Dunk. Sure. And someone who I guess also would have like all the trappings of being a knight. They have a horse. They have armor. What is it that Hot-Pie said? I forget if Hot-Pie says this in the books or the show. And I'm sorry that I'm getting that confused. That's like, I should go to jail for that. But if it was, I think it might have been in season 1 of the show. It was actually a clever line, was that a knight is someone with armor. To a kid, like somebody with armor. And a knight does in fact need armor. We see Dunk, struggle to get his armor in order to be able to enter this tourney. He can't be a knight without armor in Westeros. And
I think this is a good line because we see from knights across the story varying degree, and both within, you know, the Hedge Knight specifically, and then across the main series as well. Like we see Sirs acting either in line with these values or distinctly out of line with these values, but often their status being sort of the thing that decides whether or not they are correct, or are like acting honorably. And maybe ultimately, you know, maybe for some of the more egregious examples of dishonorable behavior, ultimately might making right in many ways of like, as long as no one can enforce the law on me, then it doesn't really matter whether I'm acting knightly or something like that. But in this particular story, like the values that sort of like Westeros espouses about knighthood and who is considered a knight and sort of admitted to these forums where knights congregate or are able to participate in society. It's kind of two different groups of people. Like it's often like quite clear that it's not always a match. And in this story in particular, like there's a pretty clear distinction between those people who act knightly and those who don't. And yet societally, like there is no distinction.
Well, one of the interesting things about like the aspects of knighthood as presented in the A Song of Ice and Fire series is that so many of those aspects are oxymoronic, that they can't really go together. So you can't be someone who vows to protect the weak, but also vows to obey your lord.
Yeah.
Those are, and we see that with Jaime. Jaime Lannister's origin story is that, right? Yeah. His whole killing of King Aerys is that specifically. Right. If he were to obey his lord, all these people in King's Landing would have died. If he protected the weak, he could not obey his lord. It's an impossible choice.
Sure.
Either way, he was wrong, right? I mean, wrong in night wise, but right to us, the modern.
And we see like Barristan Selmy also sort of grapples with this thought in some of his POV chapters, where he thinks about the fact that he protected Aerys and allowed him to do horrible things.
Yep.
Because he was fulfilling his vows and fulfilling his knightly duties. And that friction exists in a lot of the characters, like throughout the story, where being a true knight is sort of context dependent.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's also, you were just identifying like a classism issue as well, because a knight is supposed to be someone who's honorable. Well, being honorable has nothing to do with how much money you have. Plenty of people within the story, as we see with Dunk, are more honorable than richer people. But simultaneously, to be a knight at all, you have to have access to quite a lot of equipment that is not easy to come by. It's not something that like any old peasant or small folk or whatever in Westeros can just like go down to the armor store and like buy a set of armor and buy a horse and buy like all these things. There is a blockage there that is a classism issue. And I do think there's also another sort of level, I'll try to explain this as best I can. There's another level of sort of classism there and an oxymoronic sort of way, because being honorable has nothing to do with wealth, but being very wealthy, I think, is oftentimes, as we see in these characters, counter to honor. Like it makes them less likely to be honorable.
Yeah.
Because they have the privilege of wealth and they don't have to be. They don't have to behave. Right. Because they have all that money. And we see that in real life too.
And your the maintenance of that status or your place in society or your wealth potentially could be, you know, much in the way that it does in this story, where you know, I'm thinking of the moment where Dunk is riding up and down in front of the stand saying, "Are there no true knights among you?" And all of these extremely rich lords are doing the like, if I don't look at teacher, he won't call on me. Because they know that fighting against a prince and like sort of declaring themselves like is a position of risk, of their status, their wealth, and so their class standing actually makes it more difficult for them to do the right thing.
Correct.
Like from their perspective. Obviously, it is also filled with loads of privilege, and some people like Lionel Baratheon sort of recognize like they're not going to do shit to me. So like let him try to come down to Storm's End and try something, right? Like but a lot of them feel vulnerable to the point of like, well, I'm not going to engage in this because I could be risking my place.
Right.
And so their privilege actually keeps them from acting honorably, actively, right? Like where there's maybe a little less feeling of like, well, what do there's maybe someone from Dunk's perspective is like, well, what do I have to lose, right? Like all I have is the fact that I'm acting honorably and knightly and protecting the weak. Like I don't have anything else.
Right. So. Exactly. I think this is a really good transition into talking about our first of three primary knights. That we ran into a lot of knights in this story,
for sure.
But like our three main guys. First one's Baelor, who we love to pieces. But you were just talking about like the privilege sort of being a counterpoint to honor. I think Baelor, who is in like the best position here, right? Like no one can really tell him no. Like he can like sort of, if he wants to fight and be honorable, he can, and he does. But even he has to navigate this circumstance. Like he can't just come in and be like, we're not doing this. Like he doesn't just come in and say like, whoa, Maekar, sit the fuck down.
Right.
You were in the wrong. Dunk was in the right. You were torturing a peasant. He was saving her. We're going to calm down, go home. Like he doesn't just shut it down. He goes along with the trial by combat. And I wonder about why he does that. Like I've thought about that since we read the book. And I do think part of that is tied to this like knightly honor kind of thing, that he's honoring the request for the trial by combat because it's like part of their laws or whatever, and it was like requested as opposed to just shutting it down, which he could. He's like, okay, this is like, we're going to have an honorable battle and the gods will judge us, and like that's the proper way to do this, and that ultimately leads to his demise.
No, it is interesting because I'm thinking about once the accusation is made by Aerion that he was attacked by Dunk, at that point is when Baelor essentially decides that, well, the accusation has been made. I'm not going to force Aerion to withdraw it. So either there's going to be a trial, which I know my brother will sit on the, will sit in judgment, and this will go in Aerion's favor, and Dunk will face punishment and all that sort of stuff. But it is interesting that at no point does he really consider just taking Aerion, by the ear and saying, hey, cut the shit, like go home.
It's Aerion, not Maekar. I'm sorry, I got my Targaryens confused. It's Aerion who's the bad brother. My bad. I meant Aerion. Yes,
well, Aerion is Maekar's son, who's an asshole.
Yes.
So
there's too many boy Targaryens. I need a girl Targaryen. I need a Daenerys. I need an Alysanne. Give me a Rhaena. I need a Rhaena. I need a nice simple name. Give me a Lucy Targaryen, like anything,
Right. It is good that we finished the Hedge Knight before Pride, because there's no gay Targaryen women for us to talk about in this story, which is
that's just
basically like that's borderline.
We might as well be eating at Chick-fil-A right now. This is just the most. This is the most homophobic thing we've ever done, is not talk about gay Targaryen women. I miss them.
So, but he could absolutely like drag Aerion to the side and say, hey, I know that this accusation is bullshit. You attacked this puppeteer. What the fuck is wrong with you?
He could have grabbed him and said, excuse me, you're supposed to be a knight. You're supposed to protect the weak, and you're attacking a puppeteer. The fuck is wrong with you? Jesus. Like he could have given him a good smack and called it a day. But
there's a little bit of like an observation of protocol from Baelor of like,
yeah,
okay, the gentleman from King's Landing has lodged a parliamentary inquiry, and now the gentleman from Flea Bottom has time to respond to the accusation. Like, and there's a little bit of, yeah, it's a little bit of like, I'm observing protocol versus doing the right thing necessary, because he knows that Dunk is innocent. He knows Ariadne's an asshole. And he knows, but he also knows that like if it goes to trial, it will go against Dunk, and he never once thinks maybe I'll just make this go away in an informal way. Like, he will stand trial because he's been accused by a prince, and he struck a prince, so there has to be a trial. But I hope you win, Dunk.
Right, and Baelor uses, like, within that construct, he uses all the powers available to him to help, right? He does all of the honorable things he can. He tries to do the protect the weak. He fights honorably. He uses the Kingsguard's honor against them, where he's like, well, they can't strike me, so I'm just going to keep them busy, kind of thing. So he in that way, Baelor is fulfilling like his knighthood, but he's not questioning the structure that he's in that's keeping him constrained. So like, even the prince is constrained by this like societal demand to be honorable as a knight.
Yeah. The more that you're talking about, like, especially with the like sort of the inherent contradiction of acting honorably and acting honorably in the way that the sort of is expected within the structure, the more I'm convinced that like every single one of these knights has a generalized anxiety disorder.
No.
Like, they are all going through it. Obviously, to the extent to the people that don't have the privilege that they do. But I will say, like, juggling all of this it's making me anxious thinking about like where you're trying to like do the right thing, but okay, I have to think about what is X person going to think about it, what is the what's the precedent here, all that sort of stuff. There is a this inherent contradiction. It serves no one, I guess, ultimately. Like it puts the highborn knights like Baelor in this sort of position where he's torn between, I know what the right thing to do is, and yet there is a protocol for these things, and sort of an expectation that I observe certain, traditions and things like that, versus, and then on top of that, like, and then for the lowborn knights, for hedge knights and really any commoner who doesn't enjoy the social status, they are sort of at the whims of these highborn knights who are making decisions based off of something that is a completely made up thing, right? Like, the idea of knighthood is an invention. Like, there's no it's not, as much as they'd love for you to say that it's ordained by the gods and all of that. Like, I hate to break it to everybody, but this is fake.
Whoa, hold on. You're saying the structure of knighthood is not real? Hold on. Wait a minute. Whoa.
Divine ordainment of
You're saying people are not inherently different from each other? Whoa, hold on. Yeah, I mean, and may I submit to the council that this is the theme honor gets you killed. Not Ned Stark, not the very basic reading of like Ned Stark's story.
Right.
Oh,
you mean Ned is an idiot?
Yeah, not the Ned is an idiot thing. That's not what it is. But many of the knighthood stories that we observe throughout the series have the theme that, whether it be like knighthood gets you killed or just like that knighthood is impossible. Knighthood is an impossible goal. And maybe since it's impossible, we should think more about whether we should do it.
Right.
But let's talk about, so we have Baelor, who's like probably the one trying to doing probably our best example of a knight in the story. And then we have Aerion,
Mhm.
who is the violent one who attacks the puppet, who kills Sir Humphrey's horse and maims Sir Humphrey in the process. Attacks Tanzil, and is the one that causes this whole, fight in Khazar.
Trial of the Seven. Yeah. And also calls for it to be a Trial of the Seven when it could have been a one-on-one trial by combat against him and Dunk.
But he said, no, Dunk's large.
He drags as many people into it as possible.
Yeah, he does, actually. And like a lot of people die in the process, absolutely, because he's a douche.
Yeah.
And he's a knight.
Right. Sort of no questions asked, like, because and everybody knows, like, it's vocalized by characters throughout the story that Aerion is a hothead. He is cruel. He is just over the top in every negative way.
So,
and there's not a second question about the fact that he is a knight,
right?
Because of his status.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask. Is like, so what happened? Did Aerion like lie on his resume to get this job? Like, like what? How did he get knighted? It's just being a Targaryen.
I think it's simply like he's a, being a prince, even though he's the son of the firstborn son of a fourthborn son. So he's not in line for anything or whatever at the time, but I'm sure he squired for someone, noteworthy, because having a prince as your squire, I'm sure, is a great honor and probably brings some prestige to the, some of the Crown Lands houses who have knights nearby or whatever. So he gets, it's almost like it's like a kid you went to school with, where you're like, how the hell did this guy end up at whatever director, VP, corporate job that he landed? And it's like, oh, his dad is like knew so-and-so, and now he got his internship at McKinsey, and now he's and went to some prestigious business school because he's a legacy, and then and now he's making a ton of money because of who his parents are or whatever. And I feel like it's the same deal, where it's like, you talking about lying on his resume. It's like, they didn't even ask for a resume, right? Like, it's just like, and you're a knight, obviously.
Yeah. Their resume check was, and your hair is silver white. Interesting. Okay. Tell me more about that. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like he's a Nepo baby, basically.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because there are some Targaryen men that we don't know if they were ever knighted. So actually, King Viserys, Rhaenyra's father, in the text, is never, in Fire and Blood, as far as I recall, it's never indicated that he was in fact knighted, and he's not known as a fighter. And he rides his dragon twice, and then says that was spooky, and then never again. And then the dragon dies, and he goes, "Oh no! Oh well," So it's not unheard of for a Targaryen prince to not be a knight,
right?
But I guess with Aerion, I think the one thing he has going for him regarding knighthood is the violence bit.
Yeah,
he knows how to do the violence.
No qualms about it either. He's happy to do it.
And in that way, he's similar to the Mountain in the main story. So I think there's very few characters, I would say, that Martin writes that are just evil. But the Mountain is what?
Yeah.
The Mountain is just evil. We have no indication of redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Right. He wrote a character where it's like, what's his deal? And Martin's just like, rage,
violence, all of it.
Nothing else. Any other things? Nope. Burned his brother.
No thoughts, only mad.
Yep. Just a mad guy.
So
that's a totally
Well, in that way, the Mountain and Aerion are kind of on this one end of the spectrum. If you're going to put knights on a spectrum, which maybe we need more a 4-quadrant plot.
They are on the spectrum. Many of them.
Knights on the spectrum. Podcast title done. No. they're kind of on like the evil side. They're on the like they're treating knighthood as the not just the excuse but the invitation to do violence. And they're like, I love it. I want to do violence. Let's do that. Let's find the way to do the most violence. And we see Aerion repeatedly picking the most violent options he can, which is one of many reasons I think, or one of some reasons I think that maybe he killed Baelor, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's interesting to think about the fact that like Aerion became a knight probably so easily. And we spend this whole book watching Dunk scrape and claw his way into this tourney.
Yeah.
And stumble accidentally into the plot. Like we spend this whole book watching him try so hard. And then here's this little dipshit who just rode in on the horse daddy bought him and just is a knight.
Yeah, and is immediately doing things that are completely, that even the knights are like, this is not how we do business or whatever,
right.
You know, like, so his joust with Humphrey Harding where he kills the horse and everything, it's just like an immediate indication, like, this guy is a knight in name only and isn't.
Is that like a kino? Is it like a rhino, but a kino? Knight in name only.
Exactly. Exactly. So he I think the violence aspect is something though, because it's almost it's treated too, I think, by Maekar as a redeeming quality of Aerion, where he's like complaining about the fact that Egg is gone and Daron like is missing or whatever, and it's like, oh, my sons, like, they're always, you know, fucking up or whatever. But at least Aerion is here and is going to fight in the tourney.
Yeah.
Right. And like, that will be, I have that going for me at least. And like, he doesn't know that Aerion's going to like disgrace him essentially further by doing too much violence.
He should have known.
Yeah.
Come on.
But he does see it. I don't know. It is like in that initial sort of interaction with Baelor when they're talking about like when Dunk stumbles into the plot and doesn't know what's going on. He does have that line where he's like, well, Aerion's here and is going to fight and he's going to ride in the joust at least. And so it is like, at least my son is here to do violence, right? Like,
at least I have one son who will in fact do violence. Great.
Yeah, like my other sons are pieces of shit, but at least I have one who is willing to kill. So
that's what he says.
Right. It is a little, so I do think there is a reinforcement. I'm sure like you know, probably not always positive, but I'm sure there wasn't a lot sort of keeping Aerion in check as he was growing up and being fed like, the thing you're good at is fighting, right? Like, and I think we see this probably again there, you know, throughout the story, and particularly like in Fire and Blood, like throughout the Targaryen family, there are plenty of sociopaths in the Targaryen family that it's not like a madness thing. It's just they're incentivized to do violence from like from a very young age, where it's like, hey, Daemon, the thing you're good at is killing.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's like, and then we're like, how did this guy go rogue?
Yeah.
The rogue prince. What the hell's wrong with
How
him?
could this happen to this young man who we taught to swing a sword good from the time he could hold one?
We gave him a magic sword and said, kill. And then we're surprised when he did. You know?
Well, it's because they're incentivized to do violence, but also they have the privilege to do it without consequence, like Aerion.
Sure. That too. Yeah.
Like the fact is, like, they can, you know, Aerion can go into the joust and totally kill someone's horse. And it's like, like he had to give his horse over. Yeah. But he didn't go to like jail or get a trial or anything like that, you know? So yeah, absolutely. I actually really like that interpretation of like the Targaryen madness is like really just an aspect of their privilege of being the royal family. That like when you get to a certain level of privilege, like all reason goes out the window because you don't need it. Because you do whatever you want. You marry your sister, you could do whatever you want, you know, at that point.
And they have their own system of incentives and things that they value for certain members of the family, and you kind of got to find your thing. Otherwise you get written off as oh, well, his thing is drinking, or his thing is wandering off and being bald, or whatever. Like that.
Right.
It's like
yeah, he doesn't fight. He doesn't fight good. He must be bad. Or like, what was it? Jaehaerys and Alicent had one kid who was like kid number 10 or 11, who was this boy. I feel bad. I always forget his name. It starts with a V, but he like
Vaymond.
No, Vaymond's a Valerian. I forget his name, but his whole thing was that he liked to read.
Yeah.
Gross.
How dare he?
He did not like to read porn, though, because the maester gave him basically a pornography book, and he was not that interested. And he did not want to fuck his sister.
Right.
And Jaehaerys is like, I don't understand this kid.
Yeah.
I don't know what
I'm not getting through to him.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. He doesn't want to be in the attorney yard. I had him go try to practice with his sister, Alyssa. She beat the shit out of him. Now he feels bad about it and won't do it again. I don't get it. We beat him up, and he won't fight. What's the problem? What's the issue?
Vagon,
there he is. Yeah, and so they send him to the Citadel ultimately.
I put a V on the front of the wrong Targaryen name.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, Jaehaerys and Alicent were running out of names by that point. Okay, they had a lot. They did eventually have a child named Gale, so we only have so many.
They were really struggling.
Yeah, but I wonder also, because so we have these knights that are like violent in this very bad way, and then we also have plenty of knights who are appropriately violent for the setting.
Sure.
And it makes me think about two things. It makes me think about like the toxic masculinity of Westeros, and the fact that these like boys are being taught, like children are being taught how to do violence and to do violence, and that it's masculine to do violence. And also tying back to one of the themes we've talked about, which is like goodness begets goodness. Yeah. Because we see Dunk repeat what he was taught from his Night Master, and then teach it to Egg. And what he's teaching is not, you have to swing sword good. What he's teaching is like the correct, for lack of a better word, like real, true knight sort of stuff. Protect people, be honest, be clean, that kind of thing. And that's making an impression on Egg. So we see the connection between like how knighthood, or the concept of knighthood, could be taught appropriately, but for some of these knights is not taught appropriately, whatever that issue is, whether that be who taught them or how they became knighted. Because like, I don't remember exactly how the Mountain got knighted, but I don't think we know that he was a squire. I think he was just like a really big dude.
Yeah.
And the Lannister said,
yeah, there's a whole Clegane. I know there's like a story that the Hound talks about like why they, I don't know if it was their dad entered Tywin's service, and that was
maybe that's how it happened,
and they got like uplifted or whatever, because they were, whatever, they were not a noble house and they got whatever. But no, I think you're right that it was sort of like he got kind of plucked because of, hey, look at how good this kid is at violence because he's gigantic.
Well, which is kind of Dunk's story.
Right.
As far as we can tell, we could talk more now about Dunk in terms of knighthood.
Sure.
As far as we can tell from what Dunk tells us in this, he was just some kid in Flea Bottom, and his master said, that's a big boy.
Right.
I'm going to take you and teach you how to fight good.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn how to swing sword. Like,
right.
Seems
but
to
it's
be
almost
like
it. And it's almost, when you do put those next to each other, it feels like there is a bit of a dichotomy of like, hey, so, Dunk is a poor big kid who gets plucked out of this situation, gets thrown into service of a person who is expected to do violence either for sport or for, in war or whatever, like in service to a lord, and doesn't learn the lesson of like, I'm going to exert my physical advantage on people to get whatever I need, right? Like,
Mhm.
because he could easily have become, he thinks about the fact that he could end up being a robber knight and all that sort of stuff of if he gets run out and has to make money somehow, like, what do I do? But he never uses his stature or his strength or any of that for anything in the story aside from defending someone who is weaker than him.
Yep.
And defending himself. Like, those are the two things that he does in the story from a physical perspective, is like defending an innocent person and then fighting for his life essentially, when he has no other choice. And I think when you put it next to the Mountain or whatever, who is someone who gets plucked similarly for, he's just a big kid, could probably do a lot of damage, and he only uses his size and his physical abilities for exploiting, like he exploits that, and exploits people who are weaker than him and uses it to his own advantage and doesn't use it to protect people. So I think there is a bit of a like dichotomy there too of George maybe pointing out that, hey, like I can, like, size is also not a determinant of whether or not you're evil. And the lessons that Dunk learns, like you said, from Arlen and Pennytree, are ones that emphasize, I guess, the more positive characteristics of knighthood what we would associate as positive characteristics of knighthood.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the juxtaposition of these two especially really drives home the point that knighthood is fake. Knighthood
Right.
is knighthood really doesn't mean anything about the person. Like, a person being a knight is not actually impressive.
Right.
Which is why Dunk not actually being knighted is irrelevant, because he doesn't have to be an actual knight to be impressive. He just needs to do the honorable things that like the good things we as the reader, as the modern reader, expect him to do,
right,
to be impressive to us, right? Which is just like this beautiful meta commentary that I'm just like, give it to me, George. This is all I want.
This is what we're looking for.
Because there's a difference between what Westeros is expecting him to do and what we're expecting him to do. Like, Westeros would not expect him to defend Tansel. Westeros would be like, that's the prince. But we're like, holy shit, punch that guy in the face. And Dunk said, got it, and then did it. And it was great.
Right. So, standing, cheering, like.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, and I really enjoy this several times throughout the series where Martin plays with that. But plays with the difference between like what the characters think they should be doing versus what society thinks they should be doing versus what we think they should be doing. And those are all, that's like a way to build tension in a really beautiful meta commentary kind of way. And I love it. It's my favorite.
Absolutely. And it like further undermines the structure, which obviously, from the beginning, George, like a lot of this is a commentary on power structures in general and feudalism as a further meta criticism of just like disenfranchisement more broadly. And, in our modern society, people being treated as less than, and the classism inherent in all of these sorts of things. The idea that these rights and sort of these things that are considered sacred in Westeros further, just being proven as brittle facades. I think like the most iconic sort of imagery we get in this novella of as sort of a representation of the brittleness of knighthood are these lacquer helm crests.
Yes. Oh, I love the breaking helmet. Yes.
Right? So it's like these helm crests keep breaking throughout, and it's always on characters that are getting sort of bested by these like better knights, whatever. And in particular, it's the Aryan Bright Flames is like destroyed by Dunk.
Yep.
It's smashed to bits by his, the blunt end of his shield, like his
Yep.
own shield. And then Baelor Breakspears is also broken in the fight, which is like between the two of them, it's like the representation of both the sort of facade that knighthood represents, but also the facade of the entire power structure, like inherent in a royal family and all of that sort of stuff, and these like divinely ordained things, when it's clear that people aren't actually beholden to the things that they say they are, and all those. So yeah, I think it's funny because when you sort of read the book, you're so busy cheering for Dunk's victory that you don't necessarily also recognize the fact that George is smacking you over the head, the reader, with imagery about how brittle this whole thing is. And I really just love that, like how that just like very much stuck out to me this time reading it. How fragile all of this is, and how easy it is to break.
Absolutely. And I think that the use of knighthood, like you were saying, is one of many examples of Martin looking directly at us through the page and saying, like, do you get it?
Yeah.
It's not real. Do you get it? This is why when people are like, blood magic is real, I'm like, do you get it? It's not real. But there's like so many things like that. And I think that ultimately gets to his overarching commentary, which is feudalism and monarchy are bad. Yeah. These are bad structures. These are not structures that innately exist. It's not like there's like always a king or some such thing like that. And they're harmful. So he's like showing you how they're harmful in various ways.
Yeah.
And then making you question, like, why are we doing this then if this is so harmful? And it's like, we don't have to. We don't have to be doing this.
Right.
And I mean, that's part of his I think overall critique of fantasy as a genre. We get a lot of this through Sansa Stark in the main series, because Sansa starts out really idolizing knights and maidens and like this whole concept, and then by the end she's like, this is fucking fake.
Yeah.
And she is the reader realizing over time what Martin is saying.
She gets like the jokest of joke knights in Ser Dantos, and
exactly. And so I think that this what he's doing here in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is building on that overarching critique and those overarching themes that like question the structures you are handed, and how easy it is to remain trapped by them even when you don't have to. Like we were talking about with Baelor, like someone like Dunk can't break the wheel, right? Like he's not in a position.
Yeah.
But someone like Baelor has the privilege and the ability to do something about it. And he doesn't even think to, as far as we can tell.
Right.
It's not even to occur to him, because when you're in the fishbowl, you don't realize you're in the fishbowl. And I think that's a big part of his themes. So then I had a question I put in my... So we kind of talked about like knighthood being fake. And, does that pass on to things like, is blood purity fake? Yes. Monarchies, these are all fake things. And ultimately making the point that the various structures that we create for ourselves, for others, that separate ourselves from each other are bad. That generally things that we do in real life and in this fiction story that separate people arbitrarily and cause harm, or rather, I think that separate people do cause harm. When you put people in different categories and treat them differently based on those categories, you're causing harm.
Right.
Knighthood being one of those things. So what does it say about Dunk, our goodest boy, that he so desperately wants to be a knight?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think his desire to be a knight is somewhat, he grapples with it in that first scene after he buries Arlen. He thinks about like, okay, what am I going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is a little bit of, in his decision to be a knight, there is a bit of desperation and sort of feeling like, well, this is what I've got, right? Like I can take a chance. There's stuff I can do, but my only real shot at any sort of anything approaching social mobility for Dunk is like to be a knight. That is the thing that can ensure that he rises above his station maybe a little bit. And so I think there is there's a bit of that, and when you combine that with a kid who has only known basically like from the time he was quite young, he's only known being a squire since he left Flea Bottom. There is probably an air too of like he's been, I guess, indoctrinated, for lack of a better term, in the fact that like, hey, this is the noble thing, like this is the thing to do. And like many of the things that go on for Dunk, I don't think he can necessarily see the forest for the trees in like, hey, this is like, you know, me elevating myself within this like actually doesn't do anything for the people around me and these other kids from Flea Bottom and all that sort of stuff. So he almost, and then I guess now that I'm thinking about it, he kind of does try to tackle that with Egg, because he does think he's helping out another kid from Flea Bottom. So he does try to like pay it back to his old neighborhood. But yeah, I think it's a tough one because he is actively seeking sort of admission to this exclusive club, right? Like he wants desperately to be a part of it. And I think like the tough thing for Dunk is that he is learning as he goes that not everyone in the club is who he thought they were, right? Like he kind of thinks like, I'm getting into this exclusive club of all these people who have the same ideas about knighthood as me. And then he gets there and he's like, oh no.
He's like, this is not what I thought. This was not on the flyer about the knights that we were going to be killing each other's horses. Oh, geez.
Yeah, like attacking innocent civilians feel like the opposite of what...
He's got like the knight's manual, like the pamphlet out. He's like, wait a minute, innocent civilians, aren't we to protect them?
Could have swore that we talked about this.
It's like point number 3 on the PowerPoint, like protect the civilian.
So yeah, I think it's an interesting one because I think Dunk unfortunately doesn't have the context to be able to see that it's something that actually divides them, aside from the fact that he maybe just feels a little bit lucky to even have a shot to be admitted to this exclusive club that he's been told like is the ideal, right? Like this is the thing. And I don't know, like, I mean, we were talking before we started recording about, I think about this a little bit because as someone who grew up in like a conservative household and joined the military and now really grapples with like that whole idea of like, was that the right thing? That was not like necessarily a good thing to do. And there's all kinds of like, I guess things to confront about, you know, like the nature of like military service and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, if you went back in time and asked, you know, me at 18, like what I thought, I would tell you all of the idealized things about military service that like convince kids to join the military, right? So I think it's almost a similar story for Dunk, where it's like I could kind of sympathize with him in that it's like he probably believed a lot, you know, like before this tournament, he believed a lot of really idealized things about knights, and he quickly finds out that that's actually not that is propaganda.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think this is like a really interesting topic, and I
For
think
sure.
with Dunk, it's like it's a very chewy area of the story to consider because he goes in with these ideals, the idealistic vision of knighthood, and he learns that that's not true for every knight,
right?
Because there are some for whom it is.
Absolutely.
He encounters Baela Breakspear,
yeah,
the Humphreys, the Fossaways, the one Fossaway,
yeah.
There's it's
the
really
unripe Fossaway.
Yes. Did you know he's an unripe apple? I don't know if you remember. He's an unripe apple. He discovers basically that he discovers what we've been talking about is that knighthood is fake and knights are not a monolith because knighthood is fake. Being a knight doesn't mean you are any particular way. It's like the status doesn't actually incur upon you any kind of like character trait. You just have a status.
Yeah.
And I think this is true in a lot of professions. So like I'm an attorney. Part of the reason I became a lawyer, and I'm glad I did ultimately, it was a good decision. But part of the reason I became a lawyer was because I was propagandized to as a teenager and told you're going to be either a doctor or a lawyer. And I said, well, I can't do math. No math for me. So I'll go to law school. And I remember when I was in high school with all the fucking nerds, we were all like all of my friends wanted to be doctors. And I remember saying to them, like, you can't all be doctors. Like, y'all are cool, but like most of you are not smart enough for that, which is fine. I also am not smart enough for that. That's like a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But all we were told was doctor or lawyer. Those were the two options, which is insane because there's so many jobs in the universe. And the fact that like we weren't ever told anything else is crazy. But you know, I went into law, became a criminal defense attorney very much with an idealized version of like what lawyers do. And like that lawyers defend people and lawyers protect their constitutional rights, whatever. And a lot of lawyers do that. But also a lot of lawyers don't do that.
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing where, and then this, at least like for me, like I work within the criminal justice system with the understanding and knowledge that the criminal justice system is innately flawed in the United States. It has innate problems, privatized prisons, the extreme racism, the structural racism in the system, like knowing that.
Sure.
I can't demolish it. I can help individuals. And so then you kind of get to this interesting like moral question of like, do you, are you Dunk where you're helping the individual person you can encounter, but by participating in some way kind of holding up the system, or do you just like refuse to participate at all, but then those people don't get helped? It's really interesting.
No, it is. It's a really great question. I'm always reminded of this political cartoon from a few years ago where there's like a peasant type person depicted and they're like carrying a bundle of sticks and they're like, I really wish we could improve our society. And this guy in like a polo pops out of like a hole in the ground and is like, and yet you participate in society. I am very smart. And that's so yeah, there's definitely an aspect of like, you have to engage short of just like becoming a hermit and moving out into the wilderness or whatever. Like you have to engage in some way with it. And you just hope that the way that you do is in a way that's constructive.
You're just trying to do more good than harm.
Exactly. And so, yeah, the like, probably the optimistic reading of this is like Dunk's actions at Ashford Meadow inspired like some of the squires to be like good knights when they grew up, right? Like
it probably did. I mean, we have an inkling that it's going to affect Egg.
Of course, yeah.
Who may or may not turn out to be an important person. I don't know.
Yeah, we will see. We'll see what happens for that character.
Yeah.
If he's in the next one,
I don't know. He might not be. Yeah.
Is there any indication? But yeah, so I think like, you think about maybe there was some widespread impacts from the story, even about Ashford Meadow being like, maybe there were some kids who were like, you know what, I won't be a piece of shit. Like,
I'll be like Dunk the Tall. Absolutely. Yeah. I think ultimately where I land on it is like, you can't blame the individual for participating in the system that they're born into.
Right.
Like most of us don't really have all that much choice.
Sure.
There's, like, I don't like capitalism and yet I have a job, like,
right.
yeah.
Right.
Because I need somewhere to live.
Exactly.
Exactly. So I just think it's like it's such a morally interesting question. And I think that's something I was thinking about with Duncan
it's like
knighthood.
It's like, I don't agree with capitalism, but unfortunately they commodified water. So like
right.
like
they did commodify water.
So like I kind of gotta play the game, like, to a certain extent. Like shelter and water and food are commodified, so I really don't have a choice.
Right. I don't want that. I would much rather live in a socialist utopia. Anyone wants to start that, I'm on board.
I'm down, yeah.
But here I am with my half-painted wall, like, I don't know, I don't have a lot going for me right now.
Right. I bought this banner on the internet. So anyways, that's no, it's a super interesting question, I think, and I think one worth asking. And it's, when you think down, because obviously this is spoilers more for I guess the world of Ice and Fire, and not for like Dunk and Egg specifically, because we know from the world of Ice and Fire that Dunk does become a member of the Kingsguard down the road. So he becomes like as the most part of the system, right? Like in terms of
he does. He joins the police force. Ooh.
Yeah. But at the same time,
do I like it? I don't know.
But at the same time, like, there's an element of like, well, do you want, the Kingsguard's probably going to exist whether Dunk is on it or not.
Right. Yeah.
So can we at least feel good that Dunk is on it? Right. Mm-hmm. Like if somebody's going to be a Kingsguard, at least it's him. So yeah, there's all kinds of like different ways to think about, I guess, like to approach it from a moral perspective of like, is Dunk doing the right thing? It's like, at least he's a good person, I guess. Like, and who knows, like as the story progresses, like, and we only have a short section, even written of his story. So who's to say he remains, the sort of idealist? Like, I would find it quite easy to see like a jaded Dunk one day, right? Like
no, not my good boy.
Not one day, not yet. Not in this series, or not in the series so far. But anyways,
I don't want it, George.
No.
So I think we picked apart the themes of knighthood that are present here pretty well. My fun question for the ending here is, how is HBO gonna tell us these themes in their television show that's definitely gonna someday come out and is gonna be so good?
It's gonna come out.
Is it? Do we know that it's gonna?
I grow less and less confident by the day.
So for those who don't know what we're talking about, HBO recently delayed, both House of the Dragon and
they haven't officially said House of the Dragon is delayed, but I don't see how they would air both of them in the same year, like unless they're gonna truly do like a Night of the Seven Kingdoms like early next year and then into House of the Dragon in the summer. Like they've been doing.
I mean,
that's a lot of Westeros back to back.
So what is it? They delayed a Night of the Seven Kingdoms to next year.
Yeah, and they said winter 2026, which some people took to mean like the beginning of the year, and I was like, anytime I've ever heard someone talk about winter, I've always taken that to mean the end of the year.
Yeah, like November.
Yeah, where people are like, oh, Q1. I'm like, are we like, would they have even announced a delay at that point? Wouldn't they have just said like, hey, this is the release date now? Yeah,
because at the beginning of the years, they always say spring.
Yeah,
they don't say winter.
Right.
No.
Yeah, or Q1 or something like anything. When you say winter, I'm like that they're talking about like November.
Right. Yeah. Winter is November. No, is November fall?
Yeah.
I don't know. In my brain, yeah. And November is fall in my brain. But
well, like I guess for shows, whatever. November, December,
it
like
gets
the
cold
end of the
then.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've delayed it, and that does worry me.
Yeah.
Because isn't filming done?
Yeah. George said he saw 4 fully done episodes and then rough cuts of 5 and 6, which means they've just decided to like not show a show that like it's a show that they spent money on.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you put it out, it can make you money.
Yeah.
But if you don't put it out, you've already spent the money and it's not making you money.
Yeah.
So what's the only thing I could think of is that delaying that show is an easier decision than saying that House of the Dragon needs to be delayed, like for production reasons. And I would say more post-production reasons, because I'm assuming the filming is actually like the least of their worries, and the post-production of a lot of these like gigantic battles and all this sort of stuff is like going to be the
because for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, like as a person that has Adobe Premiere Pro, I can tell you that it doesn't take that long to edit stuff,
right?
And like absent, and like A Knight of the Seven Kings is not going to have the CGI that House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones had. It's because we don't have dragons, so you don't need to. There's other
a lot of
stuff.
stunts, a lot of practical effects.
I was going to say a lot of practical effects and stuff like that, but like that should be already done because that was done during filming. So I don't know if it's like if they delay release of it, if they delay release of A Knight of Seven Kingdoms, then they can delay starting to film the next season.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a money thing in that way.
That could be something.
But I don't know. I it makes me worried.
Yeah.
Because
anytime a company is like, we could be making money off of something that we've lost money on already, like that we spent money on already, it just it's a little concerning.
And HBO is the second season of The Last of Us just came out. Are you a The Last of Us person or no?
I have not kept up with season 2.
That's fair. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
I was hearing too many things. I was like, I don't know if I can get invested right now.
I have very strong opinions about it. In case anybody's curious, you could come to my TikTok page, and I've actually been streaming the game recently again. So we talk about it on stream. But I don't know what it is with HBO. They just don't write very good scripts.
Yeah.
I think they got really lucky in House of the Dragon season 1. They like hit on some like magical combination of like actors and scripting, and even then there were some things that I questioned.
Yeah.
But they like have a hard time making a cohesive. They have a hard time with like a narrative, which is a problem for like a TV network. Like they kind of need like what they need to do is hire like a bunch of annoying English majors. Who will read their scripts and push their glasses up on their faces and go, well, actually, that's what they need. Because I think they get a little too fart sniffy over there frequently. And that's kind of the problems I'm projecting onto their writer's room. So
I think there's something to the fact that they get a little wrapped around the axle with like spectacle and I don't know how far back you could trace this problem, because prior to Game of Thrones, I was not like a HBO
same
watcher. Right. Like I didn't watch a lot of HBO TV. But I would say the stuff that's been really successful for them more recently that is not, Game of Thrones or Game of Thrones adjacent is stuff like Succession and White Lotus, and these sort of like where they can just do character driven stuff, and it's a lot of like these sort of dialogue scenes of people like mad white people just talking at each other or whatever. And it remains compelling because of like the context and the like everybody sort of understands the overarching narrative. And I feel like they try to do the same thing a little bit with House of the Dragon, where it's like, well, if we just put these two people in a room, like it'll
be great. Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, but what the fuck is actually happening? Like,
Yeah.
like,
But why is Alicent in the lake? I want to know.
Like, I get that they're talking, but what's happening? Like, why are these two people talking in particular? And like, isn't there shit that's supposed to be going on? Like,
and even when there is shit that's going on, sometimes it's like, why this shit? Why, like in The Last of Us
why
season
this shit
2,
versus other shit?
In The Last of Us season 2, there's the second episode is like this big like zombie horde attacks the town, and it's like visually stunning.
Sure.
And I know they put like boatloads of money into that, and it was fantastic. The zombie horde attacks like the town, and then the next episode, our main characters leave the town and never go back. So I'm like, that was cool,
right?
But is that part of the plot? Like, or did we just say like we get one big zombie every season, and then because like last season they had one big. This time they had one. I'm like, do we only have the budget for? I would rather have smaller zombies in every episode than one big zombie. Like, I'm not impressed. It's a big zombie. I know. I played the games. We're good. Like, it looked better on the PlayStation 4. Like, So I don't know. I worry.
I'm picturing like this fake New York TV executive chomping on a cigar. Like, God damn it, you get one zombie per season.
I
told you one zombie per season. And you better make it count. They better be talking about this at the water cooler on Monday.
That's exactly what's happening. I know that's what's happening over there.
Mr. HBO.
Mr. HBO said one zombie per season. That's all you get. So with A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, what I want is for them to just make, a scene by scene exact copy of what the book is.
Right.
I would be fine actually with like an actor who plays Dunk reading the text directly to me. Like if the whole HBO show was just him sitting in a room reading it out loud, that would be fine. Yeah. I would watch it.
Yeah.
And I worry they're going to get distracted by the spectacle and not tell that story cohesively.
Yeah.
I think if they were to fail at anything, it'll be Baelor Breakspear. That is my concern.
Yeah. Specifically, you're thinking like the characterization being, because I could totally see them being like, or most people walking away from it being like, that guy is cool and the other guy is not cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think,
and it's like, there's a lot more happening.
Right. I'm worried about them flattening it.
Right.
I'm worried about him being like, him walking onto screen and it's like Dunk hears like big footsteps behind him and it's like crunch, crunch, crunch. And it's like Baelor Breakspear in like big armor and like he's got a sword on his back like fucking Cloud from Final Fantasy and he's like crunch, crunch.
Yeah.
And he's like, I am the Breakspear. Like that kind of thing.
Chadlor Brokespear or Brospear or whatever. Like, yeah.
Chadlor Brokespear, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the new fan name for him for the TV show. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that they're gonna miss, because like if they flatten Arion, like Arion's not that deep, like at least in this text. Dunk, I would argue, is a pretty three-dimensional character, but like as long as he's like nice and large, you've pretty much got it. But like someone like Baelor is like really complicated,
right?
And I don't know if they're going to hit me like a House of the Dragon season 1 and give me like characterization out the ass and I'm going to just fall over and love it. I want that to happen. I want that. I want to make it clear. I want that to happen.
Yeah.
I just have been deceived many times by them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is probably the concern, because I think people have been quick to say like, I don't know how they're going to fill 6 episodes with this. And I'm thinking like, is 6 episodes enough? Like, because yes, if you are like, this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens, it's like, not that many like big events occur in the story, right? But that's also like what you're essentially, asking for at that point is strictly a plot, like heavy. I don't care what's going on with these people. I just want to see them do stuff.
Yeah, you want only the external, not the internal. Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, like, there's so much internalization they're going to have to do. There's opportunities that they have to tell these other stories, like, because they can't get sort of Dunk's inner monologue or whatever. How do you flesh out like these characters in a way that people, because the reason that we think what we do about Baelor and the reason that we like get all of this sort of texture to these characters is because we're getting how Dunk is perceiving them, and then we're able to, like, with that perspective, sort of create this 3D character. And through, just simply telling it visually, you're going to lose some of the texture.
Yeah, I mean, you innately in a visual medium, you innately lose some of the internalization.
Of course,
because it's just different. Though you
have ways to do it.
Yeah,
like, so you have other things you can do, which would take time to do. Right, like, it takes screen time to come up with ways to, like, flesh these characters out or have them talk about stuff that creates the same feeling that you get, like, when you're.
Or I'd rather have also, like, scripts that were like shorter episodes, but more episodes if the episode was more cohesive.
Sure.
So, like, instead of an hour-long episode, maybe do a bunch of 45-minute long episodes, because if the arc of your episode makes more sense that way, then that's how you should do it. They should have done 7 episodes. Come on, guys.
Right.
It's 7.
Seriously.
It's got fucking themes. It's fucking there. Come on.
Oh man, they really.
And I do want to say, I would still support Night of the Seven Kingdoms with Dunk narrating over it like a 100%. funny sitcom. He's just falling off his horse in the middle of the trial by combat. You might wonder how I got here.
Exactly. I'd be for that. In terms of like, Dunk's internal monologue is there the whole time where Baelor is like, "You there," or whatever, "Sir," and he's like, "Is he talking to me?" He's like, "Please don't be talking. Please don't be talking to me."
Yeah. No, it's like, "You there, sir," and Dunk turns around. He's like, "Who's he talking to?"
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, someone else must have walked in. Yeah. No, I agree. I think opportunities to do some fun stuff that I'm sure they won't take, and the cohesion of the episodes. I think, like, the arc of the episodes making sense is a must, and I think something that House of the Dragon season 2 really struggled with, which I'm hoping was a writer's strike issue, is episode to episode felt like, hey, did the writers of this one watch the last one?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I feel like we talked about this already.
Yeah.
And we're kind of like retreading a lot of ground. And I was like, did they just like think this little of us as the audience that like we have to talk about this again? Or is this, hey, we didn't get a chance to do rewrites in the way that we wanted, so we just had to shoot it like this?
I don't buy any of that, like, writer's strike bullshit. Yeah. I'm like, get your shit together. Like, I've put together entire felony trial defenses in 2 days. Like, you can write a fucking fantasy story in 2 days. Come on, get going with that. Like, the writer's, I'm like much less forgiving about that kind of thing. I think also, this is not a House of the Dragon podcast, but I think that part of what happened in the second season too was their pacing was like not good.
Yeah.
But in comparison to season 1, where the pace was so fast because of how they were trying to get through the years, it especially felt slow.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that, I don't think the pacing for season 2 was especially bad. I think it was like a little slow. Yeah. It's just the comparison of coming off of season 1, where we met Rhaenyra when she was like 12 or something, and we finish when she's like in her 30s. And then we're going to like slow down to the next 3 seasons are going to take like a year or 2, because the dance is only about 2 years, at least textually.
Right.
So I think that was a problem too. Anyway, this is not a House of the Dragon podcast, but those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to HBO, it all connects, and you can't leave anything out, because it all can impact each other. And unfortunately, it does seem like Night of the Seven Kingdoms impacted by whatever HBO's got going on. Well, any I guess as we wrap up, any final thoughts or anything you've got cooking that you want the people to know about?
I'm still on my regular stuff. If you follow me on TikTok, I'm Block. On Blue Sky, I'm also Block. I have been better about posting on Blue Sky things that I'm doing. So if you want to know other things I'm doing, follow me there because I'm posting like the podcast, and I've been updating my zombie story and streaming on TikTok and stuff like that. So that's where I am. And Knighthood is fake. That's my final thought. That is my one thought.
Yeah.
How about you? Besides here on YouTube.
Yeah, I am still doing the thing over on TikTok at Damon Bachfire. Or I guess did I change my name? I don't know. Whatever. You can find it. And I was contemplating changes, like should I just do Baki Balboa across the board, like, and just unify everything, but but anyways, I'm still doing A Song of Ice and Fire stuff over there. I'm happy to not be arguing with people about Catelyn Stark at the moment.
Oh man, that was fun though.
It was fun.
It.
For like a month it felt like it was like all I was talking about. We're like, what's wrong with you people?
I'm telling you, we should do an episode about who is really to blame for the War of the Five Kingdoms.
Yes, the War of the Five Kings. I think if you really trace it all the way back, you really can point to you can point to, well, Aegon Targaryen. Like, it's really Aegon the Conqueror. Well, it's really his fault.
But you've forgotten there was a woman before him, and she's probably more to blame. I believe it was Dany's the Dreamer.
Dany's the Dreamer for the Targaryens surviving, which obviously, if they had died in the Doom, then none of this would have happened.
Exactly.
So it's really her fault.
It's really her fault. You have to always find a woman to blame. Come on.
Right. Or it's her mother's. It's her mother's fault.
It's her mother's fault. If she just hadn't given birth.
Whoever, just trace it back, mother by mother.
The woman. Really, it was the Amethyst Queen's fault. That's a deep cut for you guys out there.
The Amethyst Empress.
Empress.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely, and yeah, that is. So
yeah. See, I think we should do this episode.
We'll theorize. Who started the War of the Five Kings, and why was it not Catelyn Stark?
Yeah, not only Cat. That's
not
the theory. And we do have some episodes with some guests that are going to come on.
Yes, I'm looking forward to those.
Yeah, if you're watching and you too want to be a guest, let us know. Because we'll literally have anyone on. Because we want to have friends. So
and I'm always interested, like I feel like, based on the thoughtfulness of comments and all of that stuff, I do think like there are a lot of people who have interesting perspective, and it's always nice to have folks on. So yeah, keep an eye out. We'll be able to, as it gets closer, we'll be able to probably tease some stuff of who's coming on, and yeah, very excited to chat with folks about the series, about all kinds of stuff around, adaptation and all of the things that we like to chat about. So
yeah, and then eventually we will start the next novella.
Yes, we're not far away from starting the Sworn Sword, which will be, we'll be right back into the thick of things with Duncan Egg and back to the whimsy, obviously.
The fun whimsy. When I was looking
tons of whimsy.
I was looking at my book before, and I opened it to the beginning, and I forgot that on the first page of whimsy, there's a picture of a full drawn picture of Dunk holding a corpse.
Yeah.
In the book of whimsy.
Yeah, so much whimsy. Just whimsical from the
whimsy that was promised.
Totally. I like that. There's something in there.
I look into the fire and I see whimsy.
Right. I looked into my flames and all I saw was whimsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, amazing. Well,
fantastic.
Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. Leave a like and subscribe if you did, and
smash that like button.
Exactly.
What the kids say. Yeah.
And we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.